Okay, I just got back. I took my black walnut glued up over to Creative Woodworking Northwest over on 14th and Southeast Taylor, and they ran it right through the machine, and we took a 16th off and another 16th off, and that about did it on the top. It just feels like butter. Oh, it feels good. I don't know what grit, so their planer is also a sander, and I don't know what grit it is, but anyway, I'll be sanding this, of course. And then we flipped it over just like it was a piece of bread. And the guy over there, big strong dude who runs that planer, and him and I would flip it over, and then we did a couple of passes on the other side. So I think it's right at about 1.5 inches. Maybe just a hair less than that. When I did glue it up, I had a slight crown to the middle. I wasn't worried about taking out the crown. It was about 1/8 of an inch from the center over to the side on each side. So wasn't too concerned about taking the crown out of it, as I was just getting it smooth. And it is smooth as butter. I think it looks great. I'm excited about it. And so next I'll be filling some of these with epoxy, these little voids, and then I will cut it. I'm gonna make myself a poor man's track saw out of melamine or something, and I'll cut it, and I'm gonna probably take about 1 inch off each side and take about 1 inch off at each end, so it should end up about 46 by 6'10". So anyway, that's next. And anyway, I couldn't be happier. What a great place. It's 75 bucks to, you basically, I think you get a half hour, and it probably took us 15 to 20 minutes. And so it seems like everybody goes in there for that service. You pay those crazy guys 75 bucks, and it's well worth it. That's some of the best money I ever spent. So anyway, on to the next piece. Okay, I got the black walnut tabletop. I put it up on my workbench here, and I just ran over it with 80 grit sandpaper. And then I had a lot of voids. Now this is actually the bottom of the table, but I had a lot of voids where you get the apex, I guess, of a knot, and just tiny voids. I mean, 1/16 of an inch or 1/8 of an inch, some of them. And there was about 8 to 10 on the top and a similar number here on the bottom. And I went and used this, which is essentially like a super glue. Just squeeze that in and then hit it with this activator. And then that hardens it within 10 seconds. And then within 30 seconds, they say it's totally set up. So then just hit it with a sander. And so in the first instance, it looks kind of messy, but the sandpaper takes it right down, and it assumes a kind of a natural look. And in the camera, this looks a little whitish, but it's not actually that whitish. And once it's finished, well, maybe I got one more void there I've got to get. But this is the bottom of the table anyway. The bottom of the table did have one large, where it had a sliver of black walnut come out of it. It actually doesn't look good here on the video. Let me hit that again. It definitely needs to be sanded again. But I just filled that with the CA glue, and then I did it in about 3 layers. CA glue and activator, and did that 3 times. But at any rate, I went and cut this end where I wanted it, or almost where I wanted it. But I did realize that when you're cutting with the skill saw, if you're cutting from the top here, it tears out a little bit on the top. Now I'll be doing a 1/8 round over bit, so it would probably take care of that, but I'd rather have it tear out on the bottom. So that's why I flipped it over. Not only to work on the void, so I flipped it over so I can cut it. And so if there's any little bit of tear out in the grain, that'll happen on the bottom side. Probably didn't need to do that, but it's just precautionary. So again, I'm going to take probably an inch off each end and each inch off the sides. I'm not going to go out and buy a $700 or $800 track saw. And so I did try it with my skill saw. It did not burn the edge at all. So I've just put a new Diablo blade in it. Well, I shouldn't say at all. I guess there's a tiny bit. But actually that's just the darkness of the grain. So it did not burn. And all I used for a guide was a piece of flooring. So it has to be thin to go underneath the motor. But I had a 48-inch piece of this flooring, which has a real consistently square edge. All I did was clamp that down and use that for a guide for the saw. Piece of cake, no track saw needed. The only thing is I will have to come up with a better solution for the long length because this is about 7 feet. Now I bought this white piece of MDF to use, but it's too thick to use as a guide on the motor side of the saw. So anyway, I'll figure something out. Still not gonna spend $700 for that. Anyway, so that's where I'm at right now. I did save some of the fine powder out of the orbital sander bag. And on the other side, I had a thin joint with just tiny bit of openness, probably about 6 inches of it. And so I did mix some of my wood glue with this, mixed it up, a little heavier on the wood glue than on the powder, and just worked it in. And it worked great. Sanded it off, you can't hardly tell. So that is a good solution for that. And it's kind of a well-known solution. Anyway, so I'll cut the ends off and see if I'm going to be treating it today or if I wait to get all my hardware. Okay. Anyway, the low spots, after you do the CA glue and activation and sand it, you may still find it some tiny low spots. And so it helps just to go over those again and fill them in a little bit. And then so you get a perfectly flat surface, and it tends to even out the color. This one needs a little more work, although this is the bottom side of the table, so I'm not too worried about it. But at any rate, so just be patient and add a little more CA glue and activator and then sand again. Okay, I got a nice cut there with my skill saw, but you can see there's just a little bit of, I guess you call it tear out at the edge here. Now this is the bottom edge, but that is not enough to create any issue because I'm going to use a 1/8 inch round over bit anyway. But anyway, it was worth flipping it over because the other side is just clean as a whistle. Okay, now it's starting to look like a tabletop. I do have it cut to size at 45 inches by 6 foot 11 inches. And it's all squared up, and I just did it with my skill saw and some straight edges, and they're straight, so, and everything's square. A person like me does make some small mistakes along the way. Here's a little one, and I'm gonna try to hide it somewhat. This is a domino where these two boards were joined. It was routed into or mortised into each end here, and then the domino was placed in there. And so I had that domino too close to where I was going to cut the table to size. Of course, I wasn't sure about what size I was going to cut it at that time, so a little prior planning would have prevented piss poor performance. But at any rate, I'll be able to hide that. I put some glue and some walnut powder dust in there, and then I'll just stain this a little bit before I coat it. But anyway, it's to be expected, I guess, at least with me. Occasionally I'm gonna make it's a small mistake, but anyway, it's looking good. So now to my sanding routine, and this again is the bottom, which has turned out pretty nice. And I'll flip it over and finish sanding the top and both sides. I had just the slightest separation here from about here to here on this joint. It's good here. And on the top side, I used some glue, and I mixed it with some of the powder from the black walnut. But I thought I'd try on this side, it's underside anyway, just try some CA glue and activator. And that's as good a looking joint as the one with the glue. So I'm completely satisfied with that. If I find another one on the top side, anyway, I think I'd be perfectly comfortable using CA glue for that. So there's the underside, and in its own right, it would have made a good looking surface. It had more defects than the top side, so that's why I selected the top side. The figuring is at least as nice on this side as it is on the top. It's beautiful down here. This blonde wood is either part sapwood or it was where the tree was starting to decay. I'm not sure. And it's odd to have a little different, but it's nice to give it a little bit of character. But I can see from the end grain that it's a little, I want to say punkier, but it's not as dense. But it's perfectly good. Once it's all going to be sealed, it'll work great. So this is the side, of course, that I'll be mounting. I'm going to put C channels on. I'm going to put 2 C channels to stabilize it from warping at any point or to minimize the warping. And then, of course, I'll be mounting the stand on here and when it gets here. And that's from Rockler, and it's called a straw bundle, and it's a popular one now, I think. But it puts the structure of the legs kind of away from the ends and away from the sides as much as probably possible. So with our freakishly tall family, this will work well because more leg room is good. But it also has a very modern design, and it ships in black steel. So I'll take it in and have it powder coated. And it does have adjustable feet on it, which is great. But it does necessitate that we come up with some more, a modern design for whatever chairs we're gonna build. So that'll be, and I've been looking at a few designs that might be nice to work with that.